detrimental results. And so this workshop is going to explore these. So what I'm going to do is ask a question, and any of you who would like to answer it first, then somebody else can add on to it. So the first question is, how do you go about using social media, both personal and professionally? Do you keep accounts separate? And are you careful about what you post? And remember, our students are obviously very involved in social media, so this is a particularly important piece as they move forward into their adult life. Who would like to start?
I'll go first.
Okay.
I use social media. I have one account, and I do use my social media personally and professionally. For me, I think it's very important in my line of work to be authentic. So it is really about presenting my true self and things that are interesting to me, and things that I find curious, or things that I want to share. Specifically in marketing. Marketing is all about telling a story. So for me, my social media tells the story of who I am. And so if you're looking at it professionally, you know, you'll get some sort of inclination as to how I would go about marketing, you know, future projects. You know, I'm very passionate about select things. I'm very purposeful about the things that I post. And you know, sometimes I post things and I'm like, okay, maybe, maybe not. But again, it goes back to me being true to who I am. So nothing ever too crazy that doesn't necessarily speak to me, or something that I can't speak passionately about when I do use my social media.
Good. Nicole or Tiffany?
Yes, well, for me, because I am in education, and I have the audience of children, although I do not allow students onto my media web pages, there's still other people out there who are looking, whether it's the job market, whether it's organizations that you're involved in, or you're trying to get yourself involved in. So for me, I'm very particular about what is placed on my page. In addition to being the chapter leader in my building, I often speak to the school of the members about what's on their sites, because things that do show up on your site can cause you to lose your job, or can make you basically, if you're supposed to be working and you take the day off, one that's strictly for education information. The other one is for my personal information. In addition, I post things that are promoting the community, anything that's related to jobs or certain platforms that can benefit the community, and anything that's educational, along with family. But I am very particular about what I post.
Good. And Tiffany, do you have your 2 cents?
Well, I think I keep, well, for right now, it's 1, and I think I'm probably going to keep it this self. Prior, it was 2. When I was working on my dissertation, I kind of deactivated everything, so I only maintained LinkedIn. So for me, I believe also, like Joanne said, being your authentic self, and also, like, you know, making sure you're intentional about the message that you're presenting. So I think it's very important for the youth to kind of look at what they're writing on their social media, and then will they be able to defend it?
Good. Nicole mentioned LinkedIn, and you know, that may be a platform that some of our students may not be aware of, but it is certainly a professional platform, if you will. Do all of you have LinkedIn accounts?
Yes.
Okay, how do you find it helpful, or what do you use it for? Because that's certainly separate and apart from Instagram or, you know, the social media sites.
Well, at least for me, I've noticed, like, there's like these two worlds in LinkedIn. You know, some people feel like there's certain things that you should only publish on LinkedIn. And I've seen that, especially with all that's going on in the world, I've seen it gone into a direction where it's a lot more open, like, you know, the Facebook and Twitter about talking about social justice and kind of what's going on with the current pandemic. I do notice that because like even just me just previously being on the job market, you know, recruiters are looking at that because I see when I'm like searched and the companies that search me and so forth. So I do think it's probably good for us to introduce it to the youth earlier on and see how they can market themselves. And I'm sure that, you know, these young ladies, although these ladies can talk more about marketing, you know, for on education or the students to educate themselves about that.
So I know I recall when my son was actually in high school, he actually created a LinkedIn account, and what he put on there was his experience work-wise for activities that he did in high school, associations that he was affiliated with, as well as any work experience he may have had. So that way it does start promoting them in high school and preparing them and opening them up to job opportunities, internships, things of that nature. And for me, a lot of the things that I put on there are business related, but also sharing like educational articles, making those connections. And as Tiffany said, you do find that different types of markets or people are watching your site and looking to you for potential work or sharing of information or promoting you somehow.
Yeah, that sort of jumps to another another one of my questions, but I think that this is great. So, Joanne, you want to add to that in terms of the answer to this?
Yeah, really quickly. I absolutely love LinkedIn. I know that recruiters, in some cases, you know, it always does, but it's also sort of like an add-on piece to your resume. So I think LinkedIn is great to, even for young kids, to just follow people who are leaders in industries that they're interested in, see what type of articles are happening within the industry. It's a great way to keep up. If you're not, you know, able to get the professional publication, it's a great way to keep up with trends and things happening in the industry. So it's a really good resource to even start to say, if you're interested in architecture, you know, follow the major architectural firms and see what's happening in the industry. So I do think it's a great tool for high schoolers particularly to have, just to even start their own research in terms of where they want to go career-wise and professionally.
Good. I'm going to ask a question about recommendations for teenagers today as far as dealing with their online presence, and then some other questions in terms of the social versus the professional side of a young person. So in terms of your recommendations, what recommendations would you make to teenagers about their social media? Perhaps best practices when they are engaging in their social media.
Okay. Even when I think about my teaching practice and how I speak to students, I always say to them, is this something that you would be okay with your parents seeing you do or know that you're doing?
I usually like to say your grandparents. Parents could sometimes be too liberal about it.
True, that is true. So a lot of the time, not even a lot of times, all the time, the answer is no. So I say to them then, and that's behavior that you should not be doing when they're not around.
Good
so
point.
I say the same thing. If it's something that you don't want your parents or let's say your grandparents seeing, then it should not be posted on social media. I would also say that how is that affecting or helping you or the community? Think about how is that helping you or the community when you post something. If it's not helping you or the community, then it's not beneficial to be posted. And I'll let somebody else take over from there.
Joanne, I think you were about to say something.
Yeah, I'll add to that. I definitely agree. And I still give myself that test. Like, you know, my mom follows me. And so I always, you know, I'm very conscious of the things that I post, even though I'm a 40-something-year-old woman. It's still very important to me to have the respect of my parents. And so I do, suggest that you give yourself that 3 seconds to think about, is this something that your grandparents or your mom and dad would be proud of? I also, just social media has afforded, young kids today just a real opportunity to just have a platform. Whereas when we, me coming up, we didn't really have a platform. I would journal, and that would be really to myself, or, you would talk to your friends about it, who were probably 9 out of 10 times, just as clueless as you were. But social media really offers kids today an opportunity to speak out on things, to show their talents, if they're into photography or if they sing or dance or whatever it is. So, I think it should always just be in the back of your head that even though this is something that, you can delete, you initially put it out there, and it's going to lay the foundation and the groundwork for how people start to view you. And so it's a real good opportunity to just, express yourself. So that's why I really do love social media. But in that, I also think that you should be careful on spelling, and just really putting things together, in a way that's understandable, and, grammar and punctuation. I really do think that that's also important.
Well, a lot of the times I see these, inventive spelling and emojis, and I'm guessing, Joanne, that you're suggesting that may not be such a great idea on social media.
Not at all, because their audience, their fellow peers understand what those words and those acronyms and things that what those mean. So just in terms of you have different posts. If you're gonna post something that's a little thought-provoking, or if you're doing something in the community, perhaps it's a little bit more expressive, and you might not have the you may not want to use those things. But if you're just talking about something that you did with your friends, or how great the day was, sure, I think you have to know your audience. That's another best practice. Know who your post is targeting, and what you're trying to convey into who. So know your audience. It can be shorthand, emoji language and speak, or it can be an opportunity to really say how you've been feeling cooped up in the house, dealing with the pandemic, and all of the other social injustices and things going on. So just really know your audience as well.
Tiffany, do you have something to add to this?
I think best practice is kind of using this as an opportunity to educate the students and kind of have that door open, that, I'm trying to articulate something in a certain way, and teaching them how to, explain it that, an audience can understand, and also they're holding on to their authentic self. So it's never that what you said was necessarily wrong. It's like, how can we say it better, that it communicates your point, doesn't degrade anyone or make anybody feel unsafe. And I think that's an opportunity for educators and different people that are working with the youth on marketing themselves on social media. That I think that's a very good place to start.
What should be highlighted on your social media? What clubs, what associations, in terms of, as you say, marketing yourselves and putting yourself in the best life, what kind of organizations would be perhaps attractive for somebody else to see, or impressed that you are involved?
I would say social. If you're on like a student government club in your school, that's something that you're post on there. Sports clubs, any art clubs or groups that you are a part of.
And certainly in your case, dance, any of your dance activities.
Yes, because people are looking for certain things, and you may show up on social media and be able to be recommended, or somebody may reach out to you and find out, well, what is your experience? What do you have to offer? Maybe you can come teach a dance class. Maybe you can speak to my students about dance, or any other interest that they have. There may be auditions that are available for people who are in the arts, and that would be a great reference point for other people to find you.
Joanne,
Say teams if you're on the track team. I
you're,
also say teams if you're on the track team. You hear me?
now we can.
Okay, so teams, track team. If you're part of some community service, I think it's just good to just showcase a day in your life or a day in your weekend. So, you know, kids may not necessarily belong to, you know, any formalized group, but again, I think teams, the debate team, if you have, you know, a cheerleader, I think there's also, there are some really great positives into just being involved in general.
So we've talked a lot about what they should do and the positives and perhaps the advantages, but we all know that companies, when they hire and when people who are looking at you, they do look at your social media pages. And what kinds of information, what do you think would count somebody out for a job or a position or an opportunity from their social media?
So we've seen some unfortunate things that have been advertised on social media, whether it was in the news or people that we know ourselves. And I know I have actually reached out to individuals if I saw something that could be incriminating or not in the best light, and have suggested that they remove that from their site or reword. So certain specific examples might be a fight, people posting fights on a social media account, and you know, doing it for the purpose of getting likes, or just, you know, being children and not understanding how that could have a negative effect on their life by posting something like that. It may be something that they were doing where they thought it was all fun and games, and they were recording it with themselves in the video, and may have been saying things that were inappropriate in light of, you know, saying, ha ha, we're just fooling around, but not shedding a positive light on them or not being necessary. We know that children will be children and that they will make mistakes, but unfortunately in our world, sometimes people don't look at those as mistakes or growing pains. They look at them and they're indicted based on that information. So
And
I would, go ahead.
I was going to say, and sometimes if I were involved, I might not post it, but you as my friend would post something about me. And
Correct.
when the search happens, that comes up as well.
Yes. So it's also important to let people know, do not post you on their social media sites, or do not tag you in their photos or images.
Yeah, I agree with Nicole. You know, just anything sort of negative. And it's tough, you know, the peer pressure of living up to this online persona or just creating this life for yourself. You know, I know is very, very strong. I'd be curious to what you have to say about that, Dr. Tiffany. But I do definitely think that you have to be conscious that everyone around you has a camera, and you may be just sitting there chilling, as they say, and you know, you can be part of something that you necessarily didn't sign up for. So it's really about just, you know, again, that, you know, what would my parents or grandparents think if I was here in this moment participating? You know, not saying anything is somewhat being complicit sometimes. And so I would just really, you know, just to echo what Nicole says, you know what's right, you know what's wrong, you know, and so you just have to be conscious of that.
I know for me, when I talk to my students, I also like to like personalize it, because I think where my generation kind of like really started to be involved with I don't think we really understood the long-term implications of, you know, social media. It was like, ooh, Facebook. Like I remember being in high school, and Miss Bellevue was one of my teachers, and we were all on Facebook, and, you know, we didn't really like see that, you know, 10 years later, like how some of that might have impacted us, and how like some of these things we learned earlier on, like hearing into like grad school might have impacted us, or, you know, further on in life. And I really have them think about it and try to help them work towards the long term. Like, I get it, this person might have made you mad and you got into a back and forth argument, or, you know, one thing, like I have a lot of difficulties. Like I tell them sometimes that I don't like having my AirDrop on, because, you know, students sometimes drop, you know, inappropriate videos to expose people on AirDrop, and it gets to everyone who has an iPhone's phone. And, you know, that's just stuff that kind of just happens. And thinking about the long-term ramifications of that, and how that impacts people's parents, and just thinking about how to conflict resolution then to do all of this. And, you know, that's forever. Like once it's on the cloud, sometimes it's on the cloud and that person saves it. And there's like not much you can do, even going with the police about that and really thinking about that. So helping them like to stop feeling in the moment, but look to the long term and really helping them work through that.
Tiffany, you recently job search you mentioned before. So did you have evidence that your background or social media was new, and did they ask you question? How did that all work?
It just kind of happens. Like, you know, I saw that, you know, the specific districts were looking at me. So it said so and so for it said like this district, somebody from this company looked at your page. I even saw like a specific principal that I was interviewing with, you know, looked at my page, and it was kind of, I'm like very authentic about myself. One thing you're gonna see about on my, at least on my social media, is, you know, resources for education like Nicole. And you're also going to see advocacy and social justice information, because I believe in creating inclusive spaces for everyone based on their specific needs, because everyone's needs are just not the same. So I'm like a firm believer, if that kind of has a negative impact on your perception of me, then this is not the right position for me. Because there are high school students who are doing things right, and then they still post something and people look at that and they're like, I don't want that person, because instead of seeing leadership skills, instead of seeing that that person can challenge and articulate their different perspective, that person is just hard to work with. And that's the reality for some people. So I think it's important to kind of see both sides, is even if you do everything right, some people might still look at it and see it as a negative.
Nicole or Joanne, have anything to add? Joanne, do you get involved in your consulting with people who are looking for employees or looking for consultants, and have the opportunity to look at their social media pages?
I don't necessarily, you know, I work in music, and so it's sort of come as you are. And what I do find is that if I'm researching an artist or researching a company, I go right to their Instagram pages, and you know, and I see the type of work that they've done or the type of things that they're interested in, and I'm sure people do the same with me. So not necessarily in terms of hiring specifically, going to the, you know, the pages. It really is the work that speaks for yourself. But I am very much an aesthetics person, and so if I'm looking for work and doing some creative visuals or something, I'd like to see that come through on their Instagram page. I'd like to see how they tell the story, and aesthetically the page, you know, I'd love for the page to be as great as the work that they, you know, that they've been recommended for.
Good. You know, this, it's almost like our social media now has to create a brand. You know, Tiffany spoke about it, Nicole spoke about it, Joanne spoke about it. This speaks to you. This says, this is who I am. This is what's important to me. This is what I've been involved in. And when you think about it, you know, think about a commercial that you see on TV. A company is not going to put something negative about themselves that they want other people to see and know about them. So I think that that's an interesting point. I wanted to say, what happens if there's an unpleasant situation? What happens if there's something on your social media that you're not proud of, that you think shouldn't be there? What advice can you give to young people about that, and what can you do about it? Joanne, you're muted. We can't hear you.
I think you have to, you know, I'm here.
Okay, now we can hear you. Now we can't.
Okay. I don't have my microphone on mute. So I was saying that you just have to sort of go straight to the problem, and if there is an apology to be made, or if there's a responsibility that you have to take, I think the first step is taking that responsibility and being aware of what your actions did and caused, and speaking to all of those moments or those people. Again, you know, just true to who I am, I sort of go right to the issue and let's talk about it. So I think if there's something on social media that you're unhappy with, sure, you can take it down, but you know, in that 2 minutes, 20 people could have seen it. And so I do think that there is some sort of responsibility to address something that may have caused you a little bit of an issue.
Is there any specific platform that's better for certain industries or types of engagement than others?
I think for me personally, I see all of the platforms as being very useful. I know like Instagram's more for pictures, but I've seen videos of different activities that I can work with for my different perspectives on like mental health that I use with my students on Instagram. But you can get also those same resources by hashtags on Twitter and engaging with different people who do different work. And the same thing on LinkedIn. LinkedIn has, to me, seems more like about marketing yourself and so forth. So I think that's a good starting place, is that you're getting into, you know, the job industry to market yourself. But I also see the usefulness of also those other platforms and Facebook's about learning different, you know, interventions or different groups of support. Like Facebook has tons of groups of supports where students can kind of become a part of those. And one thing I think doesn't get advocated very early on for students is like, if you know that you want to be a psychologist, it's probably great for you to be a student member of APA or a school psychology group or engineering. And I think we forget to advocate for students to do that even in high school versus we start having those conversations in college. So that's kind of how I see it.
Good. Nicole, do you have anything?
Yes, I would like to piggyback. I mean, I know I'm only one person in a huge bowl. But I, in my middle school, I actually introduced my 8th graders to associations for various jobs, because they have to actually do a project that's around different positions or different jobs, professions that in the art and in dance. So they get exposed early on to those different platforms. I've also introduced to them because they look up information and not get a job search that's on social media, where you can actually plug
Indeed.
in. Say it again.
Indeed.
Indeed, yes. So they have actually used Indeed to get information about different career responsibilities and what they're looking for and salary. So that's also a good place, even though it's not where they're posting their information. But they can post their resumes, and it's not really considered like a social media platform, but it is something that they can utilize in helping them to find out more information about careers and what people are looking for, in addition to all of the other social medias that are out there. I know a lot of students now follow, I don't know why things are failing me, with Snapchat. And Snapchat is, you know, for me, from what I've experienced with it, with students, they have not always used it as a positive platform for them. They put things up because they feel it disappears after a certain amount of time. And what I try to always stress to students is that anything that goes out there really doesn't disappear. And, you know, there are people, of course, who are sophisticated enough to be able to find information that may not be privy to them. But you have to always be under the understanding that once you put something out there, it is out there for everyone to see.
I like to tell students. I like to tell students without an eraser.
Yes.
You know, it's very tough to erase some things. It just doesn't happen so easily. Also, just like you were talking about, Indeed, the Career Zone, which is a New York State and Department of Labor website, also has a lot of that information, and it's free as well. In this COVID space, what do you think is the biggest difference that people will experience because they're doing things more virtually? What does this environment, how different is this environment in terms of the job search and internship and opportunity search different now than it used to be?
Online interviews is one. You know, people are having online interviews for various positions. So I believe that even though you can go into a job interview personally and people can see things about you, I think there's also another aspect that people can see about people being at home and interviewing them. And I think it brings a more personal touch to it as opposed to being directly in front of them. I prefer it in person, but I also think it can allow you to relax a little bit more. Being behind the camera, even though you're visually seeing, it does allow for that opportunity of relaxation, but still being professional in the moment, which I think would make people easy. It would give people a clearer insight as to who you may be in that situation.
Joanne?
Yeah, I was going to say, you know, social media, especially now, it's a with everything that's going on, it's probably one of the first places I go to stay informed and to see what's happening. And so it's a great research tool. And again, companies are very specific and intentional about how they use each platform. Facebook may, you know, a Facebook audience may not be the Instagram audience, which is for sure not the Snapchat audience. So you have to follow them on all of their platforms, you know, so you can get the full picture. So it's again, it's a great way for, you know, as much as somebody would do research on you, you can do research on them.
I was just going to say it's a two-way street. You know, when you're becoming involved with somebody or an organization, that's one of the things that you should be doing is looking at their social media pages. Tiffany, do you have anything to add, especially since you again were just in the market?
I know. I think people should definitely practice before getting on these Zoom or these Teams interviews, because the in-person interviews that I've been on, I would say probably there was like a max, maybe like 4 people on the committee, and I was used to that. At one interview that I went on, there were 20 people on the Zoom call, and that was very, very intimidating. But, you know, because at this point, you know, there's nothing to really like prohibit people, like, you know, you're doing virtual learning, and this was an educator position, and teachers got a lot more access to provide input on who they were going to have work at their school. So, you know, this was an opportunity for them to get input, but for me, it was kind of like this is a lot of people. So, you know, just kind of prepping for that. And I think that's what we'll have to do with, you know, a lot of the students as they're, you know, some of them that might be going on to college and they might have to do virtual interviews. They might be able to get a job on the campus, even though they're doing virtual learning for their first semester as a freshman. So these are the type of things that we might have to look to in the future. We might go to a point where we might not have so much in-person interviews. So this is just at least a skill in their toolbox that they can kind of learn to adapt to how they can show their authentic self and still be, you know, on Zoom or any other video platform.
So we're almost at the end of our time, and before I give you a minute or so to just have some closing remarks, now that we've done this, what's one of the most important things that a young person coming away from watching this should get? What's your one word?
Authenticity. Just be you know, and to be able to express yourself and have thoughts and emotions, and to know that can reach somebody else. Just always try to be you, irregardless of what you see the celebrity has or the influencer has. You have to just be true to who you are.
I'm going to say responsible, and that looks different at every level. And I think that comes with what do you consider yourself to be held responsible, accountable for, and then what level of I don't want to use the word morality, but I would think, like, what is your morality behind what you think is responsible, and your values behind that.
Values is a good word.
So authentic or authenticity and responsible. Yes. And your word, Tiffany?
I would like to say probably mentorship, because I think opening the door for just like asking, like, even if it's like, some kind of office says I messed up on social media, like how can I move forward? And knowing that there's someone safe to kind of mentor to you through the mistakes and how to move forward from those mistakes, and asking, and just knowing that, everyone has different skills. Like, what you might come to me might not be the same thing you may be to Nicole or to Joe. Everybody has their specific skills, and it's just being able to tap into those skills and noticing that. So helping, the students to see that.
Good. So we have mentoring, we have responsibility, and we have authenticity. And if we can live by those, whether it's in person or in social media, I think we have it nailed. Any closing remarks or closing thoughts that you have?
I would say start LinkedIn and join professional organizations. That's like one of the, like, organization early, because you can see how build network in the field that you're looking to go to, and it's okay to change and join another professional organization.
Yeah, and most of the organizations, even though you join them as a practice in person, can be expensive. As a student, they almost have student memberships, which are very, very affordable.
I'm going to say, as much as I love social media and as much as social media is very personal in my professional life, I also do think it's important to be in the real world. And so stepping back sometimes and, taking an hour out the day to have a real conversation, book and read a real book. I think, you have to also make time for those things. Again, for me, it is a passion and emotion. So staying connected to things, and being able to social media, that's also very crucial.
Great.
I would like to say, Google yourself, type your name in, first and last name, and see what pops up, what images, what links to different things pop up. And scroll through. Don't look at just the first page. Keep scrolling, because you will find pictures or things of yourself or people that are connected to you, or even organizations, and keep scrolling. The other thing I would like to say is, if you see something on social media, research it outside of social media. Sometimes, and Tiffany and Joanne have both mentioned that there are sometimes things that you will see that is not always the truth, right? Or not always, what you want to be. So I would always say, research information outside of social media and look for more than one source.
Reliable
That information, because sometimes the information is not factual, and it's always good to do that.
Good. So I think we are at the end of our time together, and I have to tell you, Dr. Tiffany Campbell, good luck in your new job. Miss Session, your students are lucky to have you. And Miss Addie, Joanne, good luck with your new your new venture, and I'm sure you will be very, very successful. And I thank all of you for your time. And students, I hope you found this very useful. All